Hello everyone, it's Phil here from 121 IELTS, and in today's lesson we're going to be looking at how to write details paragraphs for an academic task 1 multi-graph question. This is the second part of a two-part lesson. We looked at how to write the overview, the paraphrase, and how to plan this essay in the previous video that you can find up here. In this lesson, we're going to have a look at how to organize our data, report it in a logical sequence, and look at some words and expressions that can help us connect all of our data together in a logical, clear fashion. The question that we're looking at today is this. We've got a line graph and a bar graph. So the line graph shows visits to and from the UK from 1979 to 1999, and the bar graph shows the most popular countries visited by UK residents in 1999. And as always, summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. So I just want to do a quick recap so we remember the graph because it's been a week. Types of graph we've got. Our first one is a line and the second one is a bar, exactly. Basically, we just do our question analysis for each graph. So don't go, oh, there's two graphs, it's confusing. We just break each one down individually, and by doing it individually, it becomes a lot easier. So the purpose of this first one, so trends over time, we see this is all over time. The main purpose of this is to show trends over time. And our bar chart, is it showing trends over time or comparing and contrasting? Yeah, compare and contrast. And we know this because there's only 1 year here. So we're just comparing and contrasting these different countries here. And then we have a look at how many categories we're dealing with. So our line graph, we can see from our key here that we have 2 categories. 2. And how many categories for our second graph, the bar graph? Excellent, 5, yeah. Verb tenses, so if we look at the times, you've got 1979 to 1999, so all of this is past. Second graph is 1999, so again, past, so we're just doing participle. Do we need a passive voice in line graphs or bar graphs? No. Units of measurement. So we've got visits to and from the UK. So millions of what? People or visits. If it says visits, we do not talk about visitors. So here, if we look in our key, it says visits. Visits. For the bar graph, oh, this is different. This one does say visitors. So here we can actually talk about the people and their UK visitors. And was there a key? Yes, there was. We already had a look. We've already analyzed that, so that's fine. We've had a look. We said looking at key features, so quickly remind ourselves before we get into the details paragraph. So for the line graph, everything increased, so more visits abroad than to the UK. Everything increased at this line is highest. And then looking at this bar chart, what are the key features? What jumps to your eye? My trainer at the moment has been practicing this. France and Spain, yeah. These two are much bigger than everything else. Is anything else jumping out? If your eyes are not telling you, wow, that looks really different, it's not really a key feature. I would say with the USA, Greece, and Turkey, there's no major key features here. So we're just going to mention about Spain and France having a lot more UK visitors than anywhere else, which is what we mentioned before. Our structure, we said, and multiple graphs are really nice. If you've got 2 graphs, you basically put graph 1 in details paragraph 1, and graph 2 goes in details paragraph 2. Very, very easy to group this. We always have an introduction, which is your paraphrase. Your overview is next. This talks about your key features, which we just mentioned. And now this is what we're going to look at today, these details paragraphs. 1 details paragraph for the line, 1 details paragraph for the bar graph. Line graph first. So what we want to do, if you have a line graph over time, you go 1 category followed by the next one. We're just going to talk about the visits abroad by UK residents. We finish talking about that and we go on to the next one. That is the easiest way for your examiner to read your information. And are we going to go in order of time? So we call that chronological order. Or are we going to jump around? So let's say maybe 1979, 1989, 1984, 1999, 1994. Do we go in order or not in order? In order, exactly. Once again, it's just the easiest way for someone to understand what you're talking about. Do we need to talk about every single data point? So am I going to have to talk about every year for the two categories? Tamara says no. So the idea is our examiner has a blank piece of paper. We're giving them enough information for them to be able to quite accurately draw what we're talking about. So we're only going to find the important data points. What data points are always important? There are two data points you always have to mention. It says the start and end, exactly. So we need to mention the start, we need to mention the end, and then we have a look, is there anything in the middle? So which year do you think is probably worth mentioning in the middle? So 1984 is here, so it's just after. So I think this is 1985, around 1985, around 1986. And yeah, we can see that there's been a slight change around here, so we'll mention this point. So my key data points here would be the start, this point here in 1985, and then the end. And then for the fat line here, the start, again, around 1985, and that seems to have been a slight change, and then here. So we're going to have 3 data points for each line. We can describe each line in a sentence. This is going to be one sentence, this is going to be another sentence. So overall, we're basically going to have 2 sentences for this paragraph. One sentence is going to explain this one sentence is going to explain this one. So let's do the most logical thing first, which is going to be the first line we see. So visits abroad by UK residents. How would you put 1, 2, 3 data points in? And remember, anytime you don't know exact information, we do need to use a word or some kind of approximation. So approximately, around, about, roughly. And if you're watching this at home, try this at home and see how you would describe this first line that we come across. Remember, we're going in chronological order. We're going to talk about 1979, around 1985, and 1999. Looking at the line graph, in 1979, remember, anytime you start a clause with in and you have a date, we put a comma after this because it's an introductory prepositional phrase. So in 1979, UK residents made just over 11 million visits to other countries. Good. And this figure increased during the following years, 20 years, to around 52. When we talk about a period, rather than during the following 20 years, which I'm guessing you're translating straight from Spanish, we have a better preposition. This isn't a terrible preposition, but there is a better preposition. Yeah, over. For these task ones, over is going to work a lot better. So this is good. So in this one, Marisa hasn't mentioned this point here. I don't feel that this point is incredibly important. The only reason I would be including this is to basically increase my word count. This is definitely a very feasible way of doing this. Just mentioning this point, no problem so far. Maricel, that was really good. Looking at the line graph, number of visitors from UK. Remember, when we refer to UK, we always refer to the place as the UK. The US is another one what's like that. So the number of visitors from the UK that went abroad was around 11 million in 1979. I like this, that we're using a relative clause here. Again, it's just showing that we've got a bit of variety in our grammatical structures. So good. And then it saw, again, this is a really minor thing. It just reads for me a little bit better. And it then saw a significant increase to about 20 million in 1985. I'm going to put a comma here before this, before verb ing, before increasing to just over 50 million. So here, not over the period. So when did it increase to just over 50 million? Yeah, the specific year we're referring to this data point is in 1999. So let's go back through and we're going to check the number of visitors from the UK that went abroad. Yep, visitors abroad by UK residents, good. Was around 11 million. We know already this is correct at the beginning. So a significant increase to 20 million. So about, okay, we've got approximation, 1985, okay, before increasing to just over 50 in 1999. Again, all of this is accurate, good. So we've double checked. We've got a good sentence here. We have now covered this line. So we move on to our next line. Again, we look for the key data points that we're going to talk about. 1985 here, really, I would say completely optional. If you're really worried about word count and you want to increase your word count a little bit, we can include it. But I think if I was probably doing this myself, I'm just mentioning 2 data points. I'm going to mention the first data point and the last data point. It seems like such a minor nick in the line that I really don't think this is necessary here. So I think just for concise writing, getting in good habits, we're just going to do 1979 and 1999. So once again, over to my students. Visits to the UK by overseas residents. So let's start off looking at this one. So in 1979, excellent. The figure for visits to the UK by overseas residents stood at roughly 10 million. Yep. After which it is referring to the figure. So yeah, this should be singular. It then witnessed a considerable rise to around 38 million in 1999. 38 million. So after we double check, what do we realize? Where is 38 million on the graph? 38 million is up here. Exactly, so 28. This is why we do our checks. Okay, so it's a considerable rise. Is this considerable? So something I've noticed that students love to do with this, and I think it's because they're trying to vary their language. They try to be overly extreme. So you'll get dramatic rise, a significant rise, a considerable rise. If we see a line, and think about it in the world of angles, what kind of degree angle would this be, do you think? So if that's 45 degrees, this is probably 25 degrees, I'm guessing. I would not say a 25-degree angle constitutes as a significant or a considerable rise. It's a minor thing, but just be careful of not using overly strong language. So what is it definitely doing? So it's increasing every single year. Steady, yeah. So witness a steady rise because it's consistent or consistent rise. Steady or consistent. It's just showing it's continually increasing. Steady rise to about 28 million. Okay. So this kind of thing is, for this data, I would say it's not hugely important, but I really do see a lot of students are like, well, how can I get dramatic? Because they probably learn a lot of their vocabulary from just looking at vocabulary lists. And someone has told them, okay, this adverb goes with this verb. It does in the correct context, but not every piece of data is going to plummet, rocket, or whatever other language you've learned. And if you try and force this language into your writing, it makes your data actually inaccurate because it's not rocketing. It's not increasing dramatically. We have to make sure that our adverbs and adjectives are appropriate. At times, we could always just not put an adverb or adjective in there. Okay, so let's look at our next one. So I've got my trays here. The number of overseas visitors that came to the UK was around 10 million in 1979. Again, I really like the way that my tray, you're adding in these relative clauses. Very nice way to vary your language and your grammar. And after that, so it refers to number, good, increased steadily to roughly 12 million in 1985. Before increasing again, if we're going to have this before ing, put the comma before it, thing to around 28 million in 1999. Good. This looks really accurate to me, so well done. My thread said, if I write gradual or other word, then it will reduce my task response. It's only going to reduce your task response if it is not gradual or if it is not plummeting. So if you're using the language accurately, it will be good and it will show that you're using appropriate vocabulary, so it will increase your scores. But if you're using the language inaccurately, so you're just trying to force words in that you found from lists, then it will reduce your score. So let's have a look at our bar chart. So how are we going to talk about bar chart? We've got 5 things to talk about. What order are we going to go in? Deal with what you see first. So in this bar chart, what I see first? Turkey, and then we've got Greece, USA, Spain, and France. Now we've got 5 pieces of information to talk about. I would say, writing 5 sentences is a little bit too much. So what can I do when I have a lot of data? Yeah, we can put things in a range. Do we see any data here that we could maybe group together? What categories could we group together? Mary has mentioned we could put Turkey, Greece, and the US all together. So we already said this when we were looking at the data. It wasn't particular looking for key features. Like, there's nothing striking about this data. There's no real key features down here. They're quite similar. So we could just say Turkey, Greece, and the US, and then report this data in a range. So how would you do that? And also remember, if we're going to start with our details paragraph 2, just to make it very clear that we're talking about the bar graph, we can now say, with regards to the bar graph, this is a nice expression we can use. And then we're going to group Turkey, Greece, and the US and their figures for 1999. Also, notice here, I was talking earlier about we put the definite article in front of UK. When we use UK or US as adjectives, there's no article. So I wouldn't say by the UK residents unless I was referring to a specific group of residents. In regards to the bar graph, UK residents have visited Turkey, Greece, and USA were roughly 4, 3, and 2.5 million in 1999. To say the residents were this is a little bit awkward. This expression would be better because we're referring to the numbers. The number of UK residents have visited Turkey, Greece, 1999, and then we'll put it respectively. So if you have a list of categories followed by a list of numbers, we're going to put this respectively. It's quite a nice way to show that this figure refers to this figure, etc. With Spain and France, they were both mentioned in our key features. If I've mentioned both of them as key features, it's probably good rather than grouping them to talk about them individually, because they are key features. That any key features that we ever mention in our overview need to be mentioned in detail in our details paragraphs. So we're going to talk about Spain and France separately. You could maybe introduce them like Spain and France have the highest number of visitors but then mention their numbers respectively. Or you could maybe say Spain had the second highest number of visitors of UK visitors at around 9 million, and France had the highest number at approximately 11.5. Making sure that we talk about both of these data points separately, just because they are key features. So anytime you have key features, make sure you do actually specifically talk about those data points. And that is going to be your homework, is to finish off Spain and France. Anyone who's watching at home, good luck in your studies. Hope you can use these techniques to improve your writing scores, and I'll catch you all next time. I hope you found this lesson interesting and that you'll be able to use some of these techniques in your own writing. Best of luck with your studies, and I'll see you in the next video.